All right, looks like we're live. Very hot in here. It's extremely hot. Going to be a big rain any minute now, so things might be short. See what happens. All right, looks like we're live. There we go. That worked. Very hot in here. Yeah, he says so too. We agree on that. I do agree with me on that one. Yep. Why the hell did pop the chat up way over there? Oh well. I don't know why it doesn't remember what size I want everything and just do everything the way I want it. Why do I have to fix it? All right, I think I'm rolling here. Okay. Now, lots of crap to go over, I suppose, so I really don't need you chatters today, but we'll see how it goes. Looks like I lost I had a video here of the, whatever you call it, room. Yeah, there it is. Ooh. Of course, because they bounce it. All right. It's the asshole, one of the assholes, the generic assholes. Oh, geez, YouTube can't load the comments. Great. All right, well, we'll come back to that. So it's over here, one short of something called electricity. Damn it, that's really irritating. It's always something. I hate the way YouTube changed everything. And then there's matter. Now these damn comments don't load half the time. All right, so the mindless marbles guy, of course, makes lies on other people's videos about me, which, again, maybe in the future I'll be able to sue you, for lying all over the place. So there we go. So we do have a comment from, I don't know, Antino Lucy, whatever. He's got a icon of an idiot, or an actual idiot is his icon. And he says, this guy is an idiot, LOL. I mean, just an amazing, that's on the Tesla video, of course. One of the Tesla kooks. Ugh, so pathetic. All right. So this was a kind of a long comment and sort of annoying, but most of them are. Let's see, are we broadcasting? That's a good question. We should check to see if we have any viewers. 3. Well, not too good, considering I gave you a half-hour notice. But maybe it's hot where you are too. Not that that should change anything, but who knows? All right. So this is Marcos Ross. I think that's it. Marcos. Anyway. Marcos. Yeah. Gary, the interferometer is supposed to be splitting light. Well, let's understand. The beam splitter is supposed to be splitting light, and that's the subject here. Then recombining the light. So no, it's supposed to be actually creating a wave probability thing. Can't remember the word they use, but it's not really a photon anymore. It's supposed to split one photon into 2 different photons, because frankly they can't combine different photons. There's no theory for that. But again, they don't pay attention to theory much, ironically. They have the perfect theory, but they don't pay any attention to the actual theory. All right, despite the fact that they push the mirrors around freehand, which is no law against, making apparently nanometer adjustments, which does seem unrealistic, then go on to show how the merest pressure on the machine anywhere will cause the bands to disappear or change. Well, it's true that movement, it is sensitive to movement, but again, it's sensitive. It doesn't mean it's sensitive to nanometer changes, yes. Thus showing it can measure nanometer changes in distance. Well, again, we don't know how big are those pressure changes. It doesn't take much movement to be a lot more than a nanometer. Also, they heat the air with a blower. Well, that's a good, but obviously, see, that's an obvious effect, right? Hot air diffracting light is just too obvious. So, I mean, that's not a nanometer effect either. Claiming that the atmosphere changes curves the light by refraction. Well, it does, which also is seen as the rings changing. Which one has to wonder about that, actually. So I could see heating the mirrors and stuff, changing it, but I don't know about the actual air in between. That gets a little complicated to argue that the distance changes because you heated the air. But anyway, all right. Claiming that the atmospheric changes curve the light by refraction, which also is seen as the rings changing. That would, frankly, I'd have to see that experiment, and then you could dissect what actually is getting heated. My question is, as they can generate stable laser light, to a point, checking the wavelength with an oscilloscope, well, they're checking an average. They're not really checking each photon. They're just averaging the light. So that's not exactly true either. Then why can't they, yeah, simple enough, take two separate laser sources slightly out of phase, then combine those independent beams to create the same interference pattern? Well, they can't really produce laser light that's that perfectly in phase anyway. So that's sort of one of the canards of this whole experiment. In phase beams of light are really difficult to produce. So that's in question, whether they could do that anyway. But you would argue that the two random beams would just be just as good. In the real world, there is light from the sun bouncing around and all other light sources. Yeah, but we never observe any interaction between any of these light beams. Well, whether we observe it or not doesn't mean it doesn't happen. You could argue that you're observing it with the ferrocell, for example, or different other mechanisms that create light refraction by creating little particles that diffract the light by creating two slit experiments. You can fire a laser into another laser beam at right angles and still just get two distant spots on two walls. Yes, demonstrating almost nothing, because you could argue the light fully interacted or didn't interact at all. But yes, the obvious conclusion is that the light does not interfere with light. If interference was possible, we should see some of the photons colliding or interfering. Well, the argument is the wave function can only interfere with itself. So a photon has to create two wave functions, and only those wave functions can interfere with each other. They can't interfere with other wave functions. But again, that puts the whole subject of the interferometer in question, because where exactly do these photons get converted into wave functions? It appears nowhere in the experiment does that happen. We should see some of the photons colliding or interfering. Again, you can't make two different photons interfere. You can only make a wave function from a single photon interfere, and appearing as some effect on the wall at 45 degrees. You get my drift, sort of, as I explained. Yeah, I kind of explained my drift on your drift. But this is clearly a hugely important point, that we should expect this standard model of quantum mechanics to at least be explicit. Do they think different photons can interfere with each other, or do they think a single photon creates wave functions, and those wave functions can interfere with each other, but not wave functions from separate photons? I mean, they really should be able to tell us one way or another what their theory of reality is. And they don't do that, because clearly the interference in the single and double slit experiments appears to have nothing to do with the interference happening in interferometers. And they're not explaining the lack of continuity between these experiments. And that is inappropriate of them. All right, so universal expanse. Apparently, the classical size of the photon is equal to the wavelength. A very dangerous idea, in my opinion. Obviously, it would be kind of silly to think of a photon as being miles long, I think, of its so-called frequency. I mean, there was a point where that was my conclusion too, but I'm just saying it does seem a little untenable for something that long to have any continuity in the physical universe. Like it wouldn't somehow not work because of just the fact that it's so long. Physical changes in the world would happen. It's like making this the bridge to the moon or something. It's like the idea that just the subtle, tiny movements would shatter the thing. You know, just doesn't seem practical. Let's see, equal to the wavelength of its so-called frequency. There is no real size. So I would argue that they're cannonballs, and the frequency is the distance between the cannonballs. So there's no long cannonball, short cannonball. None of that's in play here at all. When you're explaining visible light, the photon size is roughly marginally acceptable. I don't know that. When you're explaining visible light, the photon size is roughly marginally acceptable. I'm explicitly saying all the force bits, that is the force bits that make gravity, the force bits that cause magnetism, the force bits that cause the strong and weak nuclear forces, and the force bits that are visible light. They're all cannonballs, and they're all exactly the same size. And the only thing you change is frequency and polarization. All right, but when you're talking about lower frequencies like microwaves, well, microwaves are pretty high frequency, actually. The photon size is now the size of a basketball. Again, I wouldn't argue that, and I don't think physics thinks it's has dimensions in both dimensions. They might argue that it has a length, but it doesn't have a width, something like that. And then, unbelievably, at kilohertz, the photon size is now 10 times kilometers, 10 plus kilometers. Exactly. It's a rather preposterously long thing if you gave it a standard width. But regardless, I certainly am not saying, there's nothing in my theory that says the bits change size. The bits are always the same size, and all you change is the distance between them, which now is on par with waves. So I don't know exactly what your point is. So he said, so Gary, your photon theory would need to standardize photon size. Well, I did that from the very beginning, so I don't need to, because I did it like 6 years ago, or even 7. The theory always, I thought photon, that part of the theory is actually 40, whatever, 5 years old. Okay, when I was about 10, 11, I figured out that from my perspective, photons were little cannonballs. So that part of my theories existed since I was a kid. And they're all the same size. There was never any notion that the cannonballs were huge and big and all that. So, okay, standardized photon size to work. Well, obviously, it's always been a standardized size in these theories I've proposed. The only part that at any time was debatable was whether they could have possibly been stretched, but they would never be bigger. They'd all be the same width. Preferably roughly smaller than a nano or picometer. But it's probably quite small. I don't know how small you have to get. I mean, X-rays are 10 nanometers in distance, so obviously it has to be much less than the distance. Yes, the tiniest. I've pointed out they're really, really small. They're going really fast, though. So, yeah. All right, so I'm so busy. That's not, thank you, sorry. But I wish you guys would do the double slit experiment in a vacuum. That'd be interesting. I can't help thinking that atmosphere might affect the outcome of the pattern. Yeah, it would be interesting to see it done in a vacuum. Yeah, it would have been nice to see them do it in the space shuttle or something. You should try to suggest a debate to Looking Glass Universe. She's pretty interactive with people. Yeah, well, I'll try that. But I did watch one of her physics videos, and I might play it in some other video because she does it again. She does the classic thing where she shows the single slit experiment and shows no pattern, and then shows the double slit experiment with the interference pattern. And it's just, it's a classic misrepresentation of the truth. And it's like when, she's talking all this irrational number math she's doing, and she can't get a simple detail like that right. I mean, it's just like, what the fuck, man? All right. You have explained the dilemmas around late 19. This is some giraffe guy or something. 19th century classical physics that originally necessitated early quantum theory along with the photoelectric effect. I think I already did this. So the atomic structure of different metals is now different intensity. I already talked about that stuff a billion times. So yeah, we're done with that. All right. So let's see. We'll see if there's any comments to deal with. No. And so then we'll move on to the madness guy who just lies constantly. Constant lying. Let's see what I do with where the hell is that video? And that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. What the hell did I do? There's something wrong here. I don't know how it disappeared already, but it did. Let's see. It should be here. All right. So mindless marble. So I blocked because he's just a perpetual liar. Okay, so this is a comment on the John Chappelle room thing that I was in with the terrible audio. So next time I try it, I'll have to make sure I have audio. Anyway, I'm not sure what the etiquette for commenting here is, but this Invention draft science person is very confused. Right, sure I am. I'm confused as why you people are so arrogant and so authoritative about your theory when you can't even answer 3 simple little questions. He knows... He's known to take other people's comments and completely distort them. Oh, he's known to actually have public rooms to read comments, which other people don't even do, and to respond to them right in front of your faces. That's what he's known for doing, you coward and liar. Again, distort them how? By sometimes misreading them. Oh, or sometimes it's a complex subject and you've not provided quite enough sentence structure for somebody to be able to perfectly understand what you're talking about, like will happen in these comments right here, where you're going to reference things, in the middle of a 2-hour video, as if somebody's just going to have that right on their, oh yeah, I remember exactly what he said there. No, bullshit. God, you're such a petty little weasel. He confuses electric field lines. I've never confused them. It's just more lies. There's no confusion. You're the people with the confusion. You're the people who think those lines are moving somewhere and thinks they dictate velocity of electrons. That's not true. So I've used the word, I made a comparison to field lines and said electrons probably line up around surfaces much like field lines. I didn't say they were field lines. So again, he's the one who can't accurately paraphrase somebody. Dictate the velocity of electrons. Again, electrons don't have velocity unless you create a voltage. And even then, they may not have a velocity. They're attempting to be accelerated, but they can't be accelerated if they're already pressurized. But the pressure represents the potential to accelerate. But I've already pointed out electrons never have velocity. They lose it. They only have acceleration, meaning that he thinks electrons follow field lines perfectly. So again, I never said anything like any perfect this or perfect that. I just suggested that electrons will find a balance in the field, and that's where they will stay. That's what I suggested, like magnets. In reality, the field lines dictate acceleration. Let's see, again, they don't. So electrons can be free. So I don't know what that is. As I've pointed out, electrons are technically never free, because at every location in the universe, there's going to be an imbalance of some kind, a subtle one in some charge direction. It's virtually impossible for nature probably to create, except for things like right between the moon and the earth at that exact location, there would be a field balance, but it's only in one tiny location. You can't figure that out, that most of the space is not balanced between the earth and the moon. Most of the gravitational space is not in balance. Just a tiny spot is. All right, like in a cathode ray tube. So again, how is it like? I pointed out how a cathode ray tube has a cathode and an anode, and the anode spread this very size of the screen. It's very huge, and that the voltage spreads across to that anode. All right, so where's my confusion here? Where have you demonstrated anything? Oh, yes, right, you demonstrated nothing. You proved nothing, you evidenced nothing, you just made assertions. Anyone can buy a non-polarizing beam splitter. So all of them polarize to some extent or another. So it's like the Brewster angle is where you can get 100% polarization splits. So that 64 degrees or whatever, you can split light into two separate polarizations. The light that reflects will be one polarization, 100%, and the light that refracts into the glass will be 100% the opposite polarization. But at lesser angles, you have different degrees of polarization. It's just not 100%. So you're wrong again. Beam splitter himself, and actually check whether it creates any patterns on its own. Again, I don't need a non-polarizing. Frankly, we have no evidence that polarization has anything to really to do with the interference pattern in an interferometer. And actually check whether it creates patterns on its own. Like I said, I've already done that experiment, so I don't need to do it again. I did it like 3 times. All kinds of different ways, blowing the glass, cleaning glass, lots of different ways I did it, but the beam splitter always did the 50-50 thing, idiot. There are videos right here on YouTube where people try to align the beams. So again, he doesn't leave a link to any of these videos where they try to align the beams, where we actually get to see the beams as they're trying to align them. And that we actually see the beams projected at a distance where we can actually see anything at all anyway. They're projecting them 2 feet, 1 foot away, very small, so no realization of the actual size of these beams at all. They don't even do these experiments in darkness where we could actually see the pattern better. There are videos right here on YouTube, and as I've pointed out, there's videos right here on YouTube, that is all of the videos on YouTube, where they don't do the double slit math right. Every single video on YouTube, it's not done right. Every single video does the single needle math and calls it the 2 slit math. Every single one. That's what I demonstrated, asshole. This relates to a later comment. Just pointing out how this guy is such a distorter and a perverter of the truth. YouTube, where people try to align the beams and the pattern is only created upon alignment. Prove it. Prove there's no pattern at all in either one of the beams. So show me the video where they let the beam go for 4 or 5 feet and show us the pattern, and let the other beam go for 4 or 5 feet, show us the pattern, and then show us the pattern actually reflecting back off the glass, right? The pattern you don't usually get to see, because that's the one that has the pattern on it. The one going back towards the laser is the one that has the pattern on it. Dopey. Amazingly stupid fuck. Also, so he links to a page. I'm not going to bother screen sharing, but that says absolutely nothing. Okay, it's called Glass Properties Reflection, and it shows nothing. It demonstrates nothing. There's no evidence of anything on that page whatsoever. All right, so he says at 1810, he actually says glass splits light 50-50 at a 45-degree angle. It was my observation. Yes, I can do it right here in front of you, maybe. Might be humid enough actually for you to see this, but I should be able to blow some smoke maybe. Yeah, maybe I can do this. I'm not sure if I can do this, but we'll try to do this. All right, so the laser beam's working. All right, that works. And here's a piece of glass. And here's some smoke. Yeah, that might work. All right, camera is over here. One would hope it's over here. There's the camera. All right, so there's the beam. So let's see if I make smoke, you can see it. Ooh, yeah, pretty good. Okay, well, too late. You know, I can shoot it right in your eye, and then you'll say, "Oh yeah, I get you, Gary. Yeah, there it is. Right, there's a beam going up, and there's the one right in my eye." I mean, it's just not that complicated. It's a very strong beam. I mean, I didn't measure their intensities, but they're clearly both look exactly the same intensity. So let's do it one more time. See that? You see the one going over there? Well, you almost see it. I can see it. I'm going to make it go the non-direction now. It's quite obvious. But anyway, to me, I can see it quite well. It's going right over here. See? There it is. Okay, yeah, I can show it that way. It's sitting on my hand. Very bright, very bright, very bright. Not an insignificant beam at all. Very bright. And there was one going through here. It's very bright. Very bright. There's just no doubt about it. It works. The end. It works. Now, the argument would be that at a 45-degree angle, one of those beams is more polarized this way, and one of them is more polarized that way. I'm pretty sure of that theory. Like one beam has 70% polarization this way, and one beam has 70% polarization that way. But I don't think it matters really for the interferometer. All right, he says this is based off of what he saw when he shot his own laser, even though you probably can't really do an accurate comparison when the light is too intense, as in a laser beam. So somehow he says that you can't get something approximating 50-50. And again, it really wouldn't matter in the interferometer experiment if you got 60-40 or some other, the two beams weren't perfect. It really shouldn't ruin the experiment in any way. There's no theoretical reason why that would ruin the experiment. He completely fails to understand the prerequisite to basic algebra behind the MM experiment. So now he links to one of my videos where I'm pointing out how this whole bullshit that you can travel the longer distance, right? One of these arms, here's your interferometer. You're saying these two distances are the same, this way and this way. And then what do? They say the photon travels this way. This is not the same distance as this. And because I point out how that's just plain bullshit for you to claim that this is the same as this. Ooh, big rain coming. Ooh, spooky. Ooh. Just see if it knocks out my power. Anyway, all right, 50-50. Ooh. Ooh. Big wind coming. Anyway, sorry. Just seeing, it's like a train coming, so I was just waiting to see if it hit the house and everything falls down. Eek. If it doesn't blow my shit away. I mean, my greenhouse. Quite blowy. Let me look at the weather just to be sure it's on top of us and how quickly it'll be past us. An updated image. Oh, yeah, yes, it is. Ooh, big red stuff. All right. Let me look at my outdoor camera. Keep an eye on things out there. Okay. Yeah, not so bad. Everything's where it should be still. All right. All right, he completely fails to understand the prerequisite algebra. So again, their algebra means we can travel a longer distant line in the same amount of time. We can violate the speed of light, essentially. That's all. Complete bullshit. And then calls the math rigged. Yeah, nonsense is what it is. If he just said that he isn't quite sure about it, no, I'm quite sure that this bullshit, this line is longer than this line, and light can't travel both those lines at the same speed and the same amount of time without violating the speed of light. If he just said that he isn't quite sure about it, that would be one thing, but he straight out slanders others. Now, how do I slander them? By saying that's bullshit. It's bullshit to claim that photons can travel the hypotenuse, that the hypotenuse is a shorter line than one of the sides. The hypotenuse is a longer line. And if you travel a longer line in the same amount of time, that means you violated the speed of light. All right. But he straight out slanders others when they try to show him the math. So again, liar. Preposterous liar. All right. So then he comments to his own comment. At around 1855, he says that people don't put the slit width in the double slit math. No, I've said it clearly. Not a single YouTube video does it correctly. Not a single one. So there's got to be almost like tens of thousands of two slit videos on YouTube. And not one of them, the ones that cite the math, do the math with the slit width in the math. They just do single slit math and just replace the width of the slit. That variable becomes the width of the impediment. So essentially they do single impediment math. That is, they do single needle math. They do the math for a different experiment because the slit width isn't in the math. This is based off a lecture he saw on YouTube by, so again, where I saw the lecture, again, see, this is how he's slanting the truth. This is based off a lecture he saw on YouTube by a Yale professor. Why didn't you say it correctly? These are lectures recorded at Yale University. It's not a YouTube video. It's a recording of the professor's actual lecture, okay, to actual paying students. And it was at MIT and Yale. Okay, so, so lie some more. I mean, this is just a distortion of the truth, right? Trying to call it some kind of YouTube video. So when highly paid professors of physics do lectures And because they put it on YouTube, all of a sudden the lecture is of no value. It's just a YouTube video now. It's not a real lecture. I mean, an amazing perversion. But I have provided him the full Fontenhofer double-slit equation. So he hasn't provided anything. He provided a link to a forum page, okay? So a physics forum where somebody asked the question and somebody did a whole bunch, pages and pages of derivatives and never solved with real numbers. So they never said, well, look, if you have a slit width of 1 millimeter, of the two slits and the single impediments, a 0.5 millimeter, this is what you can expect. So the math was never done on an actual experiment. It's just his word that this math works. It's just his statement. And he's saying that physics professors don't know how to do it right, that nobody else on YouTube knows how to do it right. Only this guy on the forum page has the right answer. It's not the right answer isn't on Wikipedia. The right answer isn't anywhere else. It's just on this forum page. So the math for the two-slit experiment is so elusive and bizarre that only one guy in the entire known internet universe is doing it right. That's his theory. Yes, it's laughable. He's stupid. Okay. Which has both the slit width and the slit distance. Well, I don't know what a slit distance is, but obviously you have to have the distance in the equation or you can't do anything with it. Yes, the projection distance has to be in the equation. No one was arguing they didn't put the projection distance in the equation. So he implies that I had somehow said the distance isn't in the equation. The point is they take the slit width in the single slit experiment and they convert that variable. So let's say the variable is A. When they do the double slit math, they convert the A variable into the width of the slit and the width of the impediment between the two slits, the distance between the two slits. And they don't have any replacement for the slit width variable. Yeah. Just pointing out, that's the truth. That's what I stated. And he says somehow I'm lying because I state the truth. I state the truth that nobody on YouTube is doing it right. Somehow I'm a liar by stating that truth. Amazing scumbag. All right. Let's see. Along with the source that referenced a book on wave. So the double slit equation, which has both a slit, along with a source that referenced a book on waves. He doesn't even know the title of the book. So he's saying there's this great book that does physics the right way, the wave book, and he doesn't even know the title of it or who wrote it. And he called me a liar in response. No, I call you a liar for saying I said anything other than, why aren't they doing their math right? Why are physics professors doing the math wrong? That's what I asked. I asked, why isn't the slit width in the math? It seems irrational to say you're going to tell me how far spaced the bars are or how intense they're going to be or any of that stuff, and you have no width of the slits, a fundamentally important feature of the experiment, and you don't include it. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty lame for math that's supposed to be perfect. And I've pointed out the other flaws it has in terms of it doesn't duplicate the correct pattern. All right, so enough of that. So Homo sapiens says, why don't you make a video? Yeah, well, he doesn't have the balls to do that and show his flaws. Yeah, he doesn't have the, we can't show my flaws because he can only do that if he lies and misparaphrases me. Clearly doesn't actually believe 90% of what he says. So that's Joey Ramone, another guy I had to block. So clearly I believe everything I say. And so where's any evidence that I don't believe what I've been saying? What part of the theory do you think I don't believe in? I mean, it's just such a stupid accusation. Somehow I don't believe this? Yeah, it's just insanely stupid. He even said as much to me. When did I have a private conversation with this guy? So he said, he even said as much to me in a private conversation we had recently. When? When did we have a private conversation? You liar. Yeah. Oh, you mean you called me? You trolled? You mean like drunk or something? But where? Where did I ever say that? I mean, it's just such a gross lie. So yeah, all right, Joey. I didn't think I'd have to sue you, but that's a lie, Joey. I never said any such thing ever, and I'm fairly certain I didn't say it to you in person, and I certainly didn't say it under this name, Joey Ramone. So you're just a faker and a liar. Clearly, you're worthy of being sued, and you should be. And if I'm demonstrated right, I hope, and I'm dead by then, I hope posthumously somebody will have the integrity to say, yeah, these assholes shouldn't have gotten away with this crap. And they go find out who the fuck you are and sue your fucking ass off. You liar. You malicious liar. God damn. These petty people. So fucking petty. All right. Very dark out there. Anyway. So far, so good, though. Yeah. No disasters yet. Anyway. No hail. Here comes the rain, anyway. I'll look out front. If the car blows over. That would be an indication I'm in trouble if the car blows over or something. Anyway, all right, let's see if there's any comments yet. There's something else I can deal with. Ooh, a big pile of them now. Good. Now I have lots of time to catch up. Hey, Gary, is there a general chat room? And if so, what time? I don't know what that means. No. Do you think there's an end to science? Well, what? Of course, I think, yeah, it's a checkerboard. So yeah, basically the end's going to be when we realize it's a checkerboard. You figure out it's all determined and it's kind of mechanical. There's an end to there's only so much to know about fixing a car, for example. There's only so many parts. There's not an infinite amount of stuff you need to know. I mean, you could know exactly how thick the paint is or exactly how many atoms of paint are on the car, but none of that stuff would be interesting. So yes, there is an end. A point in which, let's say, 90% of the physical problems are solved and there's not really anything new to be discovered. I don't think there has been anything new discovered since Darwin, frankly. What do you think that was new that was discovered besides all the fake stuff that they got wrong? There really hasn't been anything. They haven't gotten an answer right since Darwin. Let's put it that way. Science hasn't gotten a single answer right since Darwin. It'd be the end of Einstein and Tesla. Do you think this point could be reached? I don't know what Einstein and Tesla have to do with the end of science and all that kind of bullshit. But clearly, I would argue that Einstein can be demonstrated with logic and reasoning to be an incorrect guess at the truth. And certainly Tesla had no clue. Tesla was proven wrong 100 years ago. Gary doesn't like Tesla. Well, I don't dislike Tesla. I just dislike the fanatics who have turned him into some kind of grand hero. He was a minor character who made a minor contribution, and most of it was all style and no substance. So yes, I mean, in a world where everybody was inventing everything, and every 15 minutes technology improved, for people to think Tesla did something marvelous when he just made a slight innovation to an AC motor, when everybody was innovating everything constantly, and he certainly didn't invent any of these things. I mean, it's just disgusting to give Tesla credit like he invented electricity. He didn't do that. Oh, fuck. Anyway, dang. Hey, again, whatever that is. Michael, that question can be potentially answered right now in the sense that they say they know 4% of the workings of the universe. Well, whatever. That's just silly. And from that knowledge, we glean that it is all deterministic. I don't know where you get that idiotic number. I don't think any physicist would say they only understand 4% of the function, or the if it was to be called a motor or a body, a human body, if physics was to compare it to a human body, that they would say they only understand 4%. It's just silly. The the hypotenuse is longer. How do these guys not get that? Yes, that's the obvious point. That is, the other 95% unknown can not bring some kind of magic so far unaccounted for. Look, the basic mechanism is outed. It's energy, and it's energy conservation, and there's no, it's cause and effect. I mean, all the really important facts have been gleaned. Now, Heisenberg is nonsense, and Huygens is silly, and there's lots of silly bent space is bullshit, bent space time, lots of bad stuff in there, lots of wrong answers. But I mean, even with the right answers, you still have a pretty substantial understanding that it's, you know, it's energy in, energy out. It's a logic equation. All right. No flooding yet. All right, Gary, what happened, inspired you to pursue your studies in physics? Nobody inspired me. What inspired me was the idiocy of the explanations physics had. The stupid Copenhagen, many worlds, multiverses, entanglement, all of this crap is just that. It looks like crap, it smells like crap, it functions like crap, it's crap. That's what inspired me, is that I knew there had to be a right answer because this shit was the wrong answer. Was this something you've always had an interest in your entire life? Well, it was provoked early on when they told me photons were waves in two fields. And I said, that sounds like horse shit, when photons aren't magnetic and they aren't electrical, yet they're somehow waves in these fields. Bullshit, I said, and moved on. So yes, I had an interest back then in the fact that I knew the physics was something else. So if the physics of all this understood mostly, is understood mostly, I don't know why you're going on about this shit. There is only be left the task of building ever more efficient technology around it. I don't even know what that means, ever more efficient. 3D, 4D, 5D TV. I mean, where's the efficiency in some things? Looks like we've hit the wall. Many things don't have any greater efficiency. You know, it's like once you make, it's like, say, a sex robot or something, there's only a certain function, you know what I mean? There's no needed extra features when you get to a certain point. It doesn't need to have the weather channel in one of its eyes or something. I mean, it just doesn't, there's a point where, do you think the internet's getting more efficient? With these stupid notifications all over the place, pop-up windows, all this bullshit. Doesn't look more efficient to me. That is to say, like traveling an immense distance in a short time and just getting things more efficient, like creating materials that are better than the ones used now. Well, again, this is all just whatever, la, 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 woo-woo bullshit. Or we can just call it a day now because there isn't anything truly productive to do besides seeking lesser developed civilizations to help them in their predicament or so. Well, their predicament is being stupid motherfuckers, dumb cunts who sit there and fucking impose death on their children. So they're really dumb. So frankly, the biggest thing you can do them a favor is to give them at least free condoms and pay them to use them. But whatever. It's just not on the subject at all, really. All right, what about more efficient medicine? Oh, again. Do they keep saving your life how many times? I mean, really. So once we cure disease and we cure death, are you still going to cure psychosis then too? Are we going to cure everything? And what exactly is life anyway but the pursuit and struggle against some kind of, you have to play some kind of competitive game or there's nothing to live for. So the whole thing's just a wank. And you have to have a certain mentality to enjoy the wank and a certain amount of ignorance even. So this whole thing that you're going to, better life through knowledge. No, the fruit from the tree of knowledge will not make you happy. So, you know, what you're really arguing for is let's create a bunch of technology and then we'll make a bunch of retards running the wheel. We'll make a really good wheel and then we'll have retards running the wheel. It's just stupid. Michael, there is no true point to it based on what we know of the universe. Would you agree? We can, but it doesn't mean that is the correct thing to do. Yeah, well, you won't get anywhere. There's no efficiency because we're Frankenstein monsters. There's no, you can't make the perfect environment for an alligator and then say, oh, that's a harmless environment. Not likely. And we're monsters. We feed off of other people's destruction and humiliation and lots of stuff. It's just not, we're not healthy. And by nature, we're not healthy. Yes, that is something we must do before anything else because we are directly responsible for things on this planet. Okay, well, this is just so off the subject, for fuck's sake. If we know the basics, hypothetically, there'll still be 1,000 years full of development to attain efficiency. So again, this efficiency we've never been bothered doing. Even when we had the technology to do things right, we still do them wrong. Fukushima happened after the turn of the millennia, okay? We just don't give a fuck. The truth is people are reckless and lazy and sloppy, and whatever technology that you give them, they'll turn it into a weapon eventually. Does anyone truly invent anything? Is everything invented a social algorithmic? Yeah, but I mean, clearly it requires certain brains mix the right ingredients. So there is a value to this unique mixing bowl of an Einstein, or the unique mixing bowl of Tesla, or the unique mixing bowl of Edison. Now, would somebody have figured out how to make moving pictures if Edison didn't do it? Yes. Would somebody have figured out the talking machine if Edison didn't do it? Yes. Okay. I mean, inventions were going to happen, but there's no point in saying it's not magic. There's nothing respectable about the brain that is well enough ordered to do something 100 years before anybody else would have. But that's something worthy of appreciating. Does anyone truly invent it? Okay, was your father a physicist in Mendham? Well, he was a chemical engineer, which, you know, does mean you do a lot of physics. But my father never shared any of that with me. So as funny as it sounds, yeah, my father thought I was a clunker, I think, and he just didn't, you know, we went fishing, we did lots of things, but we never talked physics, unfortunately, which is, you know, very disappointing. But it's the way it was, you know. Well, a generator can be more efficient, you know. You can make a very inefficient generator, for example. Yeah, and you put solar panels on roofs and waste 50% of the energy, correct? Which we're doing right now, which we're subsidizing right now. So we're throwing away half the value of the solar panels for no good reason whatsoever. And you're saying the human race has some hope. There's some hope the human race is going to do something wonderful. When in 2018, it still can't figure out how not to waste 50% of the energy. 50%. Gary, have you ever heard of the whatever of veil of ignorance thought experiment? I just couldn't give a shit. Again, you people just aren't on the subject at all. I'm making a comparison between conventional bullshit, standard model nonsense physics and a unification theory that I have developed. I'm really not interested in all this crap. Fuck. What happens if the very stoppable force meets the very movable object? Whatever. Fuck you. When Godzilla meets, you know, a 400-foot Casper the Ghost, who wins? Fuck you. I hope they both sit on you. Why was Islam pro-science? Oh, damn, another just totally irrelevant pile of shit. fuck you people. Solar panels can be made more efficient. Again, it's not about making them more efficient. If you're going to put them on a fucking roof, there's no point in it. Such a stupid fuck. Let's make the panels more efficient so we can waste more of the energy, so we can throw more of it in the toilet. Man, stupid fucks. And I didn't say the human race was doing anything really efficient. You're implying that there's some reason to think, well, couldn't we get some better technology and won't that fix everything? No, it won't fix a motherfucking thing. You didn't miss anything. All of these fucking assholes are not on the fucking subject, as usual. Like you, they all kind of want to turn physics into fucking goddamn wooey religious shit. All right, so I guess I'll not look at the chat for a bit. Well, I might watch it go by, but I'll talk about, all right, so the Tyler, whatever his name is, guy, did these, he does videos and, talks about stuff that I talk about, and he Wikipedia's it, and I mean, nice guy. I hope, wish him the best and all that stuff, but he keeps thinking he can do 5-minute physics, that you can do physics in 5 minutes, and you really can't. It takes quite a while, quite a lot of banging against the ideas before you put them in the right order and before you understand the differences between things. So he just totally fucked up the whole lensing argument in the sense that he thinks Eddington was viewing rays from the sun being bent by the moon or some other kind of nutty thing. I mean, he just got it so wrong, and in the sense of not even understanding what Eddington's experiment was attempting to do and why by Newton's math it would be impossible to do. Okay, because you didn't have the two cheats in the math. So anyway, I guess that's all I want. I mean, I like Tyler, but again, I just, you have to spend a little more time, to know physics. You shouldn't be just talking off the top of your head when you really haven't done the work to understand these things conceptually properly. All right. Will civilization ever get off fossil fuels? Well, again, fossil fuels are cheaper than every other form of energy at the moment, so I guess not. And is climate change really an existential threat to civilization? I don't even know how it's existential. It's about as real as you can get, so I don't know how it's existential. I mean, it's a physical threat. It's going to physically drown you or burn you or radiate you. It's going to do something physical to you. Going to bring back a whole bunch of, insects, swarms, and, cockroaches and grasshoppers. Jurassic Park 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. If science is over, what do you suggest? So again, this is a stupid remark. I'm sitting here pointing out how science has some major problems in its basic structure in terms of making some wrong guesses. And so the asshole says, if science is over. That's just amazing. I just had my first physics class yesterday, just learned some vector math so far. Yes, well, vectors are really important because all the forces are rays. So, yes, vectors will be very important. Let's see. Did you know the world is actually flat? Oh, good. I can block you. Finally, somebody worthy of a blocking. You time-wasting hunk of shit. Die, 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 you Muslim cunt. All right. It's hard to say on topic with such a narrow and specialized topic of discussion. Well, I mean, it covers the strong nuclear force, magnetism, electricity, and gravity. Oh, gee, that's just too narrow. Yeah, no room for conversation there. It covers the two-slit experiment, the interferometer. We could even do some entanglement conversations, polarization experiments, the silly whatever his name is again. What's this stupid fucking cunt's name? I don't know why I can never remember it. But the guy who claims to have, in 1980 proved entanglement, horseshit polarization experiment. Another guy using a magic beam splitter, the spinning magic patent pending beam splitter they never let anybody else use. All right, let's see. It's hard to say. Okay. I thought you were dead. I don't know who. Oh, that's Osama bin Laden. Don't talk to trolls. I mean, obvious trolls. Osama bin Laden. Yes, that's obvious troll. Kill him. Gary, you treat the people who take time out of their finite lives to watch you like dirt. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not here for you. I'm here to make arguments. And you're not being a foil for the arguments I wish to make. So you're of no use to me. Now, it's not my fault you're of no use. I would suggest you go somewhere and talk wooey physics at some wooey physics room. I'm sure there's lots of places where Buddhists and other people want to talk about quantum mechanics in some sort of spiritual way and talk about what the meaning of our lives is and all that crap and that horse shit. I'm sure there's rooms for that crap because that's all people want to do is talk horse shit. But yeah, I want to do hardcore elemental physics here. Nothing personal, but I want to do physics. I'm not social media-ing. This isn't social media for me. Okay, it's intellectual media. Yes, Gary, you have so many interesting views. Well, it's true. I just happen to be an interesting person. Full of interesting. I'm also some sort of fishing good luck charm, because I just happened to, because of the spot I locate at this stupid fishing derby where I help out. I know it's evil fishing. Anyway, I just do it because it's a social thing and it's a community thing and whatever. But anyway, the kids I end up helping have won 2 years in a row. Yeah. Because I'm lucky. Let's see. One of the problems we have is the lack of proper credentials. Oh, fuck that. That would allow people to take the unification theory seriously. I don't see how it makes. That doesn't. Obviously, people with great credentials suck at physics. I mean, Mickey Ayakaku is a shitty physicist, as well as many other arguments. Why is that? We suck. So I don't know. This proper credential thing is just so annoying. Obviously, like I just pointed out earlier in this thing, there's that other physics girl, whatever somebody mentioned. And again, she's doing really complex, irrational number math. And she still couldn't figure out that the single slit experiment doesn't create just a blob. And you're just like, wow. I mean, how can they be that misinformed? Is quantum non-locality equal to entanglement? Well, I think the whole very concept of a non-locality is a retarded. That's as idiotic as space-time. It's just jargon. Non-locality. What the fuck could that possibly mean? Yes, well, I answered your comment in the beginning of this video. So go watch the beginning of the video. I mean, what physics documentary has not been in? I mean, what physics documentary has he not been in? Well, there's a bunch he hasn't been in, actually, but regardless, I mean, the talking heads are quite ignorant. They make these classic mistakes. I mean, I've watched them, that Al-Qadhari guy and a few others. Brian Greene. I've seen them describe it and go, look, the single slit just makes a blob. I mean, they say it. You're just like, what the fuck? Let's just forget the Newton's rings ever existed. I mean, it's really that bad. The math seems bogus. The math seems contrived, is what it seems. It seems like the math is constructed to create the answer. So it's like they knew what they had to create as a product, and they just engineered the math to create the answer. But there's no theory in the math. There's just an engineered product that works kind of. That's not nearly as accurate as they claim it to be. I don't know what vape Nason Woo would mean, but whatever. I don't do this rabbit head thing either. Whatever that is. Yeah. All right, so what else is there to complain about on my agenda of complaints? Let's see. What is an atom, and can they only be made in the sun? So again, way off the subject. Atoms are made out of electrons and protons primarily. Neutron is a hybrid of an electron and a proton. But that's it. Those are the electrical bits. They're held together in a tension of charge, and we call them, when they're in tension, an atom. And for the different geometric shapes of how that tension can be arranged, we call those different elements. But atoms are just byproducts of the elemental function, which is electrons and protons, which are the magnetic monopoles. So they're filtering energy and creating pressure. They're mediating pressure, creating highs and lows in pressure. Do you know where the word eureka comes from? Wow, no, I just couldn't care less. Yeah, atoms aren't made in the sun. Atoms are combined in the sun. You know, if you understand what an atom is, I'm just saying that you can take two hydrogen atoms and create a helium atom, and you have leftover energy. But I'm just saying you're not really creating an atom. You're making a little Frankenstein monster. You're taking atoms and making new atoms out of the little constituent atoms. So that's what most atom making is. Like, nothing is made out of, nothing that we know of makes hydrogen, for example. So the hydrogen atom is the building block of all the other atoms. Don't they say the photon is considered the force carrier of electromagnetism? Right, they call it a virtual photon, which is, so that's the joke, right? They understand it's a ray force, it's a straight line force, yet they have no way of figuring out where it came from, so they have to call it a virtual photon because they don't have any clue where it came from. Yeah, so as much as they talk about all this wave shit, again, Maxwell's equations are about vectors. They're about angles that lines of force travel. It's not about waves. All right, proper social credentials. I don't know what that means. Includes social connections and such. If people were less dense, good arguments and advice would have already made impact through the internet. Well, look, most people are sheeple, unfortunately. So all of this is contingent. If we had better leaders, we'd have better followers. It's really that simple. So yes, unfortunately, we've chosen our leaders badly, and we end up with bad sheeple in turn. So I'm just saying that's just unfortunate. We don't set a very high standard. Unlike Planck, Einstein entertained the possibility that there might be actual physical quanta of light, what we now call photons. Well, clearly Feynman is of the same opinion. Feynman considers light corpuscular, just like Newton. And he merely claims there's a force in the substance of the universe that imposes randomness on its function, but that it itself is a corpuscle, not a wave. So, that's the irony of all this bullshit, is that the icons of their own theory don't even believe their theory. They believe some other wacky theory. And again, Einstein was such a hypocrite. Because on quantum mechanics, he got the idea that, oh yeah, it's a clockwork universe, cause and effect, it's got to be mechanical. And then he sits there and does this stupid bent space, wishy-washy mush that's completely unphysical, complete mush, complete blah, blah, blah. So he's, it's just such a hypocrite to be looking for a cause and effect universe and then create something as wacky as whatever, space sucking and time sucking. Regardless of social standing of the person making good arguments, I meant, yeah, well, whatever. Just all that philosophy bullshit is not really, really important. I mean, obviously, everything is you have to play everything by the game rules. And so, yes, games suck. And the fact that physics is a game played by, these magicians and these sleight of handers and all this other, more show than go and all that kind of crap. Yeah, it just sucks that everything has to be tainted with personality. I obviously don't believe fixing physics will fix humanity. No, humanity is retarded. The only way it might fix it is that people will realize how gullible and foolish they have been, that they will believe anything because somebody tells them and it seems right or it sounds right on just a superficial way. So they might realize how stupid they really are. The human race might have to concede, oh, we're such dupes, we fell for it. And so maybe they'd gain a little bit of humility and realize they're really not competent to do a goddamn thing, and they really shouldn't even be allowed to vote because they really don't know what they're voting for, because they don't understand a fucking thing. They just keep spouting their fucking opinions based on their superficial knowledge of the subject. People are just such dumbasses. Yes, if people are incapable of understanding, then they should concede they're too stupid, and then they shouldn't be having kids. They shouldn't be doing lots of things they think they're qualified to do. If you can't understand enough physics to judge whether the guy's right or wrong, then you probably can't understand enough philosophy to know whether you should have kids or not. Then you're pretty fucking retarded, and all you retards should be in cages. Yeah, well, Ken Wheeler will never allow anyone. No, he can only beat up dead people. Ken Wheeler is such a pussy. He can only beat up dead people. He'll never pick a fight with a living person because he'll lose. What is your opinion of the observer effect? And obviously, I think it's an absolute religious pile of shit. No evidence of any observer effect. It's all just absolute nonsense. Singularity is nonsense. So you people are way off subject again. Just drifting off into fairyland. Yeah, Einstein had kids he abandoned. Obviously, he had kids before he was smart enough to know that's a bad idea. I mean, obviously, Einstein was too horny to figure out how to use a condom. So, I mean, I'm just saying, Einstein was obviously a pretty reckless slob because he didn't want to have kids. He ruined his wife's career. She had to quit school to have these little monsters. I mean, she really wanted a career in physics. It's just such an irony. Einstein wanted to be a plumber, but Mrs. Einstein had a passion for physics. She was desperate for it. She wanted his life so bad. And it's just so ironic, you know how it turned out, because she had the passion and he had none. I don't think you can be allergic to rubber. That doesn't even sound right. Who could be allergic to rubber? What do you think happened at the beginning of the universe? So I point out how the questions are just totally idiotic, and there's another one. I think the universe farted. That was the Big Bang. Big Bang is really just a fart. We're just made of smelly gas. Oh, not more of this credential crap, are developed by people who don't treat each other like brothers, but want to play games and have fun in life, whatever all that crap means. Well, that says nothing. I don't know what says nothing, but whatever. Why would I bother with questions about origins? There's no evidence to dissect origins. Do you disagree with the Heisenberg? Yes, of course. It's just made up nonsense. For a circumstance, we obviously can't see photons. Obviously, we can't measure their position. It's impossible. It's like measuring the position of a Volkswagen by plowing a Volkswagen into the Volkswagen. Obviously, the Volkswagen won't be in the same position if I hit it with another Volkswagen. I mean, yeah. It's quite hopeless to measure the position of a photon until it actually hits an electron. Then you know where it is. But otherwise, you have no fucking clue exactly where it is, because there's no way to detect exactly where it is. But there's nothing uncertain. It has an actual position. It travels actual space at an actual speed. Just a pile of shit. A God of the Gaps made up. Well, we cannot know, so we'll make a lie up of that somehow we can't know. Okay, that we can't, not just that we can't see it, but that there's nothing to be seen. Yes, that'll make us seem smarter. If we pretend it wasn't our failure, it was the failure of the photon. The photon fails to have a position. That makes us feel so much better than having to admit, oh no, we're just kind of lame and we can't see it. Is classical physics outdated? Well, some of it is, like witch doctors and stuff, witch doctor physics. Tesla's physics is certainly outdated. Like there's a flow of ether flying around the earth and we could just stick an antenna up and collect all the ether we want. Yeah, that's outdated bullshit. Or is there something to be gleaned from the old models overlooked? Again, what old models? Some of the stuff is rock solid, okay? I mean, Newton's force laws, they're perfect. There's nothing wrong with this stuff. All right? It's just stupid to have these conversations. Again, you people just keep making it more and more complicated. It's not that complicated. If a quantum computer beats, oh, fuck this shit. So regular computer, would it convince you? Beats it at what? And computes with what? You mean a quantum computer that costs $17 million or $17 billion? Oh yeah, it's a lot better than a IBM for 400. Oh yeah. Well, it really should be. If you're going to make a computer that costs $17 billion, then yeah, maybe it should be a little better than a $400 computer. But the principle of the qubit will never function. You'll never do this. Let's jump to the future and get the answer. You'll never do that. You'll never undo the fact that you have to do the bit math bit by bit. You have to do the equation 2 plus 2. You have to actually do it, get the 4. You can't just jump to 4. The fabric of reality that the double-slit experiment is evidence for the many worlds interpretation. I don't know what that means. I mean, a lot of physicists believe in, 1/3 of them believe in many worlds. 1/3 of them believes in Copenhagen. 1/3 of them believes in the other dartboard bullshit. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. I don't know what your point is. Physicists believe silly things. Yes, that's why I'm doing this. Let's see. When you did your exercise earlier with glass, is the energies, messy word that is, changed in vector the same effect producing gravity and matter? I don't even know what that means. I've already explained. Gravity is the force unpolarized, okay, not at a frequency, and it's absorbed by material bodies, and that's why they're pressurized. That's why they get hot in the center. It's because they're the gravity pressure. Yeah. So, but I don't know what I don't know. No, there's no bent glass in gravity. So there's no bending of gravity. There's no refracting of gravity. None of that shit happens. Who was the most important physicist equation? Well, whatever. Equations are generally speaking pretty sucky. The ones that they look, I mean, the Maxwell equations that, unified electricity and magnetism, even though they're not perfect, were pretty good work. So that was probably the most important technologically, or as a starting point for understanding some of the conservation laws, I guess. But, Einstein's wrong answers are hugely important as wrong answers. You just can't get around the fact that that's gigantic. This wrong answer of bent space is a huge mistake. And the quantum mechanical wrong answer of Heisenberg and wave theory is another huge mistake. So the errors are almost more important than the correct discoveries. And such. Now it looks like the rain is over. Yay. And doesn't look like anything blew away, so that's good. And there were only a few drips inside the house, so that's good. So good. Come on, damn it. I think my damn thing broke. What's wrong with you, fucker? Adapter. Let's see. Okay. I was asked a question about the influence of rotation of the Earth on the gravitational pull that is in effect on objects on Earth, for example. Well, I don't know. Rotation isn't a gravitational thing. But I don't know what to do with that. What's your best argument against the quantum chaos and an uncertainty BS? Which you have before, I believe. I think my best argument against is the fact that I've unified the forces and demonstrated the source of charge and eliminated any need for any. I'm explaining what the virtual photons are, where the energy comes from. I'm explaining where the energy comes from. The energy comes from the external universe. And I guess recognizing that magnets are just filtering energy that already exists. They're not creating any energy. They're just filtering energy that goes through them. Do you think nuclear fission will work? Well, it depends on what you mean by work. Do I think you can do it in a cold way? Probably not. Well, Stephen Hawking's was. I don't think he wasn't a glib physicist. He was just. I don't think he was all that reasonable or rational. Frankly, I don't think he was terribly logical. I mean, to come up with this nonsense about the aliens coming to Earth to eat us because they can't figure out we're smart is just ludicrous. I mean, we're clearly educables. That's the worst you could say about us is, okay, well, maybe we're not as smart as we could be or something. But I mean, come on, we're pretty fucking smart. The Earth was not rotating. Would that affect the gravitational pull of Earth, and how? Well, the moon doesn't rotate, and it does just fine. I mean, it doesn't rotate relative to the Earth. It always shows the Earth the same face. So it rotates one turn from the sun's perspective per 20 days, 27 days or whatever it is. But yeah, it's pretty stagnant. Clearly, it doesn't affect its gravity any. Have you ever been fascinated by prime numbers? No. Those little gimmicks don't do much for me, frankly. Many physicists think they are a key to understanding nature. Well, human beings want to find the trick. They always think there's a magic key to get the leprechaun gold, or they want like the treasure map, or, the magic charm, or the special quarter, whatever, the golden egg. So, yeah, I mean, it's clearly something you look for. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought the whole universe was based on the number 3. I thought the number 3 was really important because it's like everything seemed to be like 3 kinds of everything and 3 levels of everything. And you can almost argue the universe is like 3 levels, the tiny, tiny level, and then our level, and then the big universe level. You could argue that there's sun, planets, moons, 3 levels. So I thought the number 3 was somehow, pi 3.14, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Yeah. But, I think that's just projection. I don't think it's real beyond the fact that you need 3 things to have a middle and 2 ends, 3, right? So I think it just fits because everything has a middle and 2 ends. So yeah, there's a lot of 3s because there's a lot of things that have 2 ends in the middle. Is an equation for gravity even necessary? Well, I think it's useful. I mean, I think the basic understanding is 99% of the game is just recognizing that gravity is a function of mass, as Newton did. The subtleties that Einstein injected based on the fact that light or gravity travels at the speed of light, and the fact that the sun's center of gravity is also processing, those are minorly important, points for accuracy, but they're really not significant. I mean, they're little parts of the story, not the big part of the story. I'm curious what you think space is. I think it's nothing. That's what I think space is. Obviously, it's the nothing separating the somethings. Fuck. A rigid coordinate system? No. Where is the center? Who cares? Is there an edge? Maybe. It could all be, the universe could be a bubble. And everything that happens, the photons go out to the edge of the bubble, and when they hit the bubble, they come back as gravity. They lose their frequency. So all the energy hits the outside of the bubble, and it bounces back as energy, raw energy again. Something like that. There's lots of ways you can describe it, but who cares? Ugh. Oh, yeah, 3. That makes sense. When I was a kid, I thought Pizza Hut and McDonald's, so this is not going to be any fun, were opposites. Well, I don't even know what that means. And cats and dogs and hot dogs and hamburgers. Well, they sort of are, I suppose, but whatever. I thought the quantum eraser experiment proved entanglement. Well, I've demonstrated the quantum eraser experiment's a polarization experiment, and they haven't proven that polarization is 50-50 by the exact arguments I've made. So, I have the debunk for that. And if you look at the proof is not like, look at this huge pile of evidence we have for it. They have a tiny mathematical disparity over millions of permutations. It's a catch-22 kind of, oh, it doesn't fit the whatever his name is mathematical theorem, and therefore it must be. But it's a tiny proof, not a strong proof. It's a really weak proof, not a strong proof. Let's see. Wasn't it you who said glass splits light 50-50 at about 45? Oh, he's just doing the same thing over again? God damn. Yeah, I showed it in this video. When I was a kid, I thought Planet of the Apes were gorillas attacking people in the news. I don't know. Yeah. I thought my father was actually Superman. Yeah, I did. I thought he's just lying about having a regular job, and he went and made the Superman show because my father looked just like Clark Kent. Yeah. So he's Superman in real life. But I didn't think he had superpowers. So I did know Superman was a show. I didn't know it wasn't he wasn't really Superman. He was just really Superman on TV, though. What do you think about the expanding universe and redshift and all that jazz? Well, redshift is complicated. I think the expanding universe is possible, but who cares? But redshift is complicated because, as I pointed out, when something is moving perpendicular to you at a very high speed, it may be possible that that actually creates red or blue shift. And the physics gets a little bit wacky when you start thinking about what happens when something's moving perpendicular and it's shooting light off of its surface, and what that would happen to the frequency of that light. So there's lots of reasons to suspect that there's other reasons for redshift besides what they think, which is everything is, moving at preposterously fast speeds away from each other. You should try playing some soft piano in the background of your videos, Gary. Why? Why should I do that? Seems to me you're conceding that people are already broken. They don't even understand what concentration is and how it works. When you put music behind conversation, you're just creating the mental circumstance of distraction. You're just creating the opportunity for it. You should try playing some. No, okay, I believe redshift is bogus. Well, I don't think it's bogus, but whatever. I mean, obviously the theory that if you're moving away and you're throwing light, you're going to make the frequency longer. And that if I'm moving away when I'm receiving light, then I'm going to make the frequency longer. It's quite obvious. Redshift as a concept happens. What causes it, it gets a little tricky. All right. Okay, carry on. You're doing a great job. Well, I'm doing as Doing the only job I know how to do. No, it sets the mood if you're just faint in the background. Well, you say that. Okay, that's your theory. My theory is you don't know shit about your own psychology. And I'm just saying, especially coming from a woman, you don't demonstrate great concentration skills, women. So this might be one of the reasons. Too much piano music in the background. It's like the multitasking argument. I'm just saying you're expecting your brain to multitask. And I just don't think it's constructive in the long run. It might make you feel like it's less irritating and it's less aggravating and it's less frustrating because you have something soothing. Okay. So it's like having cupcakes and heroin. A cupcake could take some of the edge off the heroin's brutal rush. And, but I mean, it'd be better just to do heroin or just do cupcake. All right. What if the Earth is rotating 10 times faster? How would that affect us? 10,000 faster. 10,000 times faster? And you mean by rotating, spinning? Or do you mean rotating in like a year would be 10 seconds long? Why is your vaporizer in 2 pieces? Because I bought it cheap and broken, and it works better this way. I don't have to recharge batteries. Just easier. I know this is unrelated, but what do you think about not Israeli? I think Israel is insane. So I never much liked Israel, and it just seems like it's getting dumber with time. So not much to say. The whole problem is just going to keep getting worse. You can't have this Israel running a concentration camp, essentially. The UN ought to just step in and say it ought to demilitarize Israel, and we ought to just guarantee Israel's existence, do it with UN forces, and just like we attempted to denuclearize Iran, we should denuclearize Israel and demilitarize it, and put a bunch of UN soldiers on the border. I don't remember. The stroke was like 10 years ago, so it was like 40, whatever, 8, something like that. Maybe 12 years ago now. I don't know. Could you? Yeah, 12 years ago, probably. So I was 45. Could you possibly send me a pair of your worn underpants? Probably not. I don't like sending stuff. I mean, if it was easy to send stuff, what the hell? What do I care? But you'd have to pay me the postage anyway, retard. So, yeah, we can get rid of that asshole. Pedo. Yeah, it's a great name, Pedo. It's kind of nice when somebody called Pedo is trying to molest me when I'm 58. That's pretty cool. If I ran into a physicist, what would be the first thing I would tell them about your updates? Yeah, updates are overviews. I called it update dates, but it's really overview videos. I don't know what to say. I mean, obviously you could tell him that, you've listened to it and it sounds plausible, and that somebody with a physics degree ought to point out why this guy's wrong because he sounds pretty right. Yes, 10,000 times faster than what is now. Again, faster than what? Spinning or going around the Earth. It can't go 10,000. It can't go 10,000 times faster around the sun. That's not possible because it leaves gravity. So I don't know what you're asking me. If it spins 10,000 times faster, I haven't thought about the implications, but it seems clear that the velocity that you'd be giving things, that all the stuff on the surface of the Earth would perhaps tend to escape gravity. But I can't be sure of that. I don't know what you're asking, so it's a silly question, I think. If there was a reverse universe where everything was liquid except for two holes, would they attract each other or repel or perhaps orbit? Two holes? What does that even mean? If it was a reverse universe where everything was liquid, so you're saying if the space was a solid and the matter was a nothing. I've sort of pointed out that it doesn't matter. The force matter duality theoretically wouldn't matter which one's matter and which one's force. So you could switch the names, but clearly the force bits move and the matter bits don't. So there's moving bits and non-moving bits, and that's the important thing. So I don't, you know. So anyway, around itself. So he just keeps not answering simple questions. Around itself. So if the Earth spins 10,000 times faster around itself, jeez, sorry. Yeah, I'm not an expert on centrifugal force versus gravitational force and which one wins. And so, you know, off the top of my head, I'm probably not going to be able to answer that question with anything other than a guess. But I already answered your question, didn't I? Do you think there's a black hole at the center of the galaxy? Well, there's obviously some dense stuff at the center of the galaxy, but the galaxy isn't what they think. It isn't like the center of the galaxy isn't like some massive object that has everything else in orbit. Clearly, what's happening in galaxies is the stuff on one side is attracting the stuff on the other side. It doesn't need the shit in the middle. Galaxies have mass. They're binary by function. Every star has a binary partner, so to speak, across from it. So everything, they're all binary rotations in a sense. The mass in the middle is irrelevant almost. It's nothing like a solar system. It's very little like a solar system. I can't say it's nothing. Obviously, it's like, but it's very little like a solar system. We have adapted to the situation. No, I already did that. Do you think there's a black hole? I already did that. What's causing the gravity? Well, obviously, there's a ton of mass in a galaxy. Billions and billions of stars. So there's a lot of mass in a galaxy, and all of those things have gravity. And they all have gravity moving in the opposite direction on the other side of the galaxy. So there's lots of stuff holding it together. Also, what's your opinion of dark energy and dark matter? Well, we've been over that. They're both made up and they don't exist. Since there's a speed of light and a speed of sound, well, they're nothing like each other, so there's no point in comparing them. Is there a speed of smell? Silly question. Gary, I understand your impatience now. Half of this chat is hot garbage. Well, it's hot shit is what it is. It stinks. Rancid. It's the refuse of rancid brains. yeah, you know how much how easy it is for molecules to migrate has to do with density. It's a density buoyancy argument. So it doesn't really have anything to do with the speed of sound or the speed of light. It's going to have to do with how big the molecule is and how big the molecules are that it's moving through. Smells can be smells can be, they can't be a particle. I don't think you can smell a fucking electron, but we can smell ions, you know. So, yeah, we can smell atoms, I think. So, yeah, very small molecules can have odor. Coming up on 2 hours, yes, time for dinner soon. But we'll keep going until my neck is starting to get stiff. So we'll wait till it gets a stiffer. Let's see. Okay, well, at the rate of rotation has no relationship to the amount of gravity. That's certainly correct. But the amount of rotation would have an effect on velocity on objects. So they would have they may have a velocity that's high enough to escape gravity. If there was only two small objects on each side of the universe, would their gravity affect each other? Yes. It's the inverse square law. The forces essentially could go infinitely, but they're like a photon. So I could have a light on and I could walk 10 miles away from the light. And theoretically, if I had a flat Earth, or let's say I'm in space and I go 10 miles away from the light bulb in space. Now, and I put a photo detector out. Now, I wouldn't receive a photon maybe once every 10 minutes from that light. So the force is still going to hit me with a full photon, but it's not going to do it very often. So I don't know how else to answer your question. Two things across the universe would still affect each other, but the effect would be slow because it would take a long time to build up any amount of force. But their production of gravity would be consistent with we're back to my heat argument. Their internal pressure is essentially dictating the production of their gravity. The olfactory speed is equivalent to the atmospheric pressure times wind speed, age of the odor shared, LLL. Age of the odor shared, squared. I guess he made that part up. But yeah, there's probably is a formalization, okay, of the equation for how fast the smell molecule moves. But again, it'd have to be an average smell molecule. smell molecule. I never thought I'd say the word smell molecule. That is kind of funny. Hi, Gary. If the moon casts a shadow on the Earth, which blocks the external pressure, that's not technically what happens, but fine. Allowing water to rise due to the outward force of the Earth, could the lack of downward force be detected? So again, this isn't so much shadow, it's an absorption, but again, it's still going to be a shadow as long as the moon is falling towards the Earth. Allowing water to rise blocks the external pressure, allowing water to rise due to the outward force of the Earth. That's not the way the Earth moves. It's just not the way the sun moves either. So when it's really about the center of gravity, and because the Earth is liquid in the center, the Earth's center of gravity can displace or absorb the effects of the shadow, and it doesn't necessarily have the energy to pull on water. So it's kind of like the tide argument. The tides are really about pulling water off the poles. So the tides are kind of created by the gravity pulling the water off the poles. So the water goes higher, and there's higher tides on the north and very south latitudes have higher tides than at the equator, because more water is being moved off the polar parts of the earth than off the middle of the earth. But I don't want to get into those. I'm surprised Michael would ask such a complex question. I mean, those tide kind of arguments are really complex. I mean, there's more than one force effect that decides how much the earth bulges. Excellent, thanks. So I'm sitting under a tree with an apple falls on my head a little bit harder if there's shade under the tree versus sunshine. Gravity's not sun or light or any of those things, and the tree doesn't absorb enough of it, so it's a silly question. Describe what you would like a simulator of force bit theory to do. Well, maybe you should PM me on that subject. Maybe I'll do a video on it. That's what I'll do. I'll do a video on what I think I have to do, because I have been thinking about it. But the simple rules, okay, that you have these two bodies, the proton and the electron, and then you're just going to represent this force in some sort of proportional way. See, the trick is the size of things. You have to think about the fact that electrons obviously, I think, capture force a lot easier than nucleuses. So in a sense, electrons have to be bigger than protons, I think, just to explain why there is why the electron force is so much more significant than the proton force. So I think, although the charge is the same, I think the electrons somehow have to have more surface area. So I mean, those are the complex things that get into this thing. I mean, if to do it right, I have to have those things pretty explicit. But I mean, obviously, I have a list of things I can point out. The right turn thing I can point out, the perpendicular thing. And why do electrons, I have to do a video on the electrons, just why their movement is what creates the force, is because it's really their deceleration. When electrons decelerate, that's when they emit the force, perpendicular. That's when they exchange the force and end up giving up black force perpendicularly. That's when they create the EMF, is actually when they're decelerating. And what people aren't realizing is that when they're being accelerated, if they don't gain velocity, that is, if their speed doesn't, like you falling in the atmosphere, you're going to go faster and faster and faster as you fall down. But electrons don't go faster and faster and faster. They just go 10 meters per second, 10 meters per second, 10 meters per second. They never go any faster. You have to hit them with more voltage to make them go faster, more gravity. So what's happening is that they're accelerating and they're losing all of the force from the acceleration. So they're instantly decelerating, and then they're accelerating per second, and then they decelerate per second. So they're always giving back the force. So it's like the space shuttle going up. The flame is obvious, big giant flame going one way, no flame going the other way, because the energy is going inside the space shuttle. But for an electron, you'd see the flame. The flame would shoot out the sides, and you would see how it can't go any faster because it keeps losing the energy out its perpendicular sides. So that's a really good, I mean, it's rock solid, explains so much. So it's a video I have to do on electrons, because it really does explain why it's the movement of electrons in the sense of their acceleration and deceleration that creates EMF. That's what creates the ability to create voltage in a all that shit. Really good. All right. Is the dome of the Earth solid to a certain degree? Well, it's only solid for a few miles, and that's it. As seen by Earth strikes, I don't know what that means. And could space be a form of liquid state unknown? Well, obviously, I don't believe any of that shit, so no, I don't think so. What happens if you unite your belly button? I don't know what that means, but I think I'll discontinue communication with you because you're not funny and you're wasting my time. So goodbye. Well, I'll give you a timeout, but do it again and it's goodbye. Let's see. The fact that someone believes you when you say there's 4 billion stars, but will check if you say the point is wet, just goes to show how embarrassingly stupid people are. I don't even know what the fuck that meant. Piro, what's your email? Well, I would like to discuss your space comments, among other things. Well, you could PM his YouTube channel, but whatever. For example, hypothetically, if an atom was created now and here at my house, would its gravitational force affect the universe instantly? Well, obviously, it's already been pointed out, the force always travels the speed of light, so it can't affect anything instantly. There's nothing affects anything instantly. So that's pretty stupid. The second point I'd make is that a single atom, the part that gives the atom mass is the force inside the atom. It's the pressure created by trapping force between electrons and protons. And so the atom itself isn't going to be as inverse square law kind of force. It's a very, see how to say it. But yeah, well, whatever. It's obviously such a tiny amount of force, but it clearly would take, the force can only travel at the speed of light. So that's all. No, it's not Miles Mathis. Miles Mathis is a coward who doesn't do anything interactive. And he's also an idiot. And he's also a paranoid kook. And he's also a truther nutter. And he's also rude and obnoxious. Oh, we do have something in common. Oh, okay. Well, we have one thing in common. Is it possible to understand physics to a decent degree, if one was really bad at math in high school? Well, of course, I would say yes, because math is only one way to model. You can model something by drawing a picture of it. You can model things by doing an animation. You don't have to do math explicitly. You can just use a ruler and, measure you can do geometry. You can do algebra. All of that stuff can be graphical. I mean, most algebra can be rendered in graphic representations, which could have been caused by constructed consciousness, but regardless, I don't know what that means. Depends on the math. I mean, some math is almost fun. I enjoyed trigonometry because, it was just basically had these simple rules that you do the stuff in the parentheses first and do the stuff in the big parentheses last, and you do this, that, and you just, and it was just multiplication and division. So that's kind of fun. But when they start getting into this irrational number shit and, theta, x, y, z squared, cubed, it's so convoluted. It's like, there's no fun in that, because you don't know what the fuck that is. I realize it's a complex argument, just thinking about direction as it may go some way to solidifying your theory. Yeah, well, uh, yeah, well, I'm not sure. It's just, I don't know if it's a very fruitful area, to get into is the thermodynamics, so to speak, how the force migrates through matter of different densities and at different temperatures. I mean, that really does get really a little bit complex. Anyway, it is also possible to be good at math and be totally stupid. Well, math is like it's like playing an instrument, musical stuff. If you have a bad start, you just never have any fun doing it. And maybe if you have a good start, then you have fun doing it. And it's just a subjective thing. It's when you're good at something, right at the beginning, it's so much easier than if you're fighting it. And so if math is presented to you in a way where you don't understand it and it's frustrating, then it's no fun anymore. It's also possibly totally stupid not have babies. Yes, being too stupid to get pregnant is a wonderful thing. Okay, thanks. Gary, I think you might need glasses. Yeah, well, who cares? I'm not getting them. Police car behind you, LOL. I don't know what that means, but I don't know if I care what it means. So you're going to have to get a little, they'll give you another 10 minutes here. You only ask some really brilliant questions. That's all you're getting, another 10 minutes. Okay, so you believe in gravitons. Well, again, I don't know. You want to put words in my mouth, fine. I've called them force bits. And so, yes, it's the same force. So you could call the graviton, magneton. I don't know what you would call them when they're inside the strong nuclear force or something. Nucleotons. I don't know. That gets kind of a messy word. Obviously, it's the same force. It just has to do with how the force is manifest, what frequency it arrives at, and what polarization it is. Are these proven then, in your opinion? Well, I think it's proven that the force behaves just like that. So Mach gravity proves particle gravity works to describe gravity. And the fact that they call them virtual photons is what they call the force carriers in magnetism. I mean, that's pretty much pointing right to what I'm saying, isn't it? If they're calling it a virtual photon, I'm saying it's an absolute photon. That's pretty much win for me, right? I heard the news at some time that they had found evidence of gravitons, but they're not gravitons like I'm describing. They think a graviton is some kind of like anti-particle or something. He's talking about the flashing lights, so I don't care. I don't know why that has to come up in every fucking video, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, people are just, that's the way their brains work. They just can't stay on the subject. What if your theory is no different than rigging a structure to meet certain parameters like height, width? Well, then it's one hell of a theory because it unifies physics. So it seems amazing that I could just rig something up that actually unifies all the forces and actually works in terms of it doesn't create any monstrous paradoxes and it doesn't have any monstrous conflicts with the established math. That would be a pretty amazing feat on my part. I mean, you're saying there's many ways to do it, and where are those many ways? I haven't seen them. Obviously, conventional physics couldn't find many ways. That's why they ended up with bent space-time and quantum mechanics, two completely incompatible theories. And all the little ether nutters, their theories don't work. Big problems. They don't explain the drag problem at all. They don't explain where the energy comes from. They have the same problem explaining where the energy comes from for gravity. Where's the energy come from? Where's the energy that come from that pushes two magnets together? They don't explain any of that. So again, this putrid kind of pukey argument you make that, oh, there's nothing special about coming up with a theory that unifies. Yeah, there is something special about it. Nobody else has done it that's been able to hold up to any kind of argument. Again, I've posted a video with just 3 simple questions. Nobody can provide me the answers to those 3 questions. What a lovely discussion, Gary. You seem a bit calmer than when you do this room at night. Well, it's been a long day. I mean, it was humid as fuck anyway. And, I had to cut grass and do all kinds of shit. So, yeah, I'm a little worn out. I think I might have had a wank in there, So, yeah, maybe I'm a little mellower because I'm a little tired. No different than, okay, we already did that. How many MWs is your laser? I don't know. They always lie about that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's like 4 or 5, I guess. But I never got this right because they have it, 1 minute it's watts and the next minute it's milliwatts. And I'm thinking, well, it can't be milliwatts because the light's damn fucking bright. So it's got to be 4 watts because it's really fucking bright, So I just say that 4 watts makes sense to me because if I compare it to like 100-watt light bulb, it's like, yeah, that's at least 4%, at least. Well, it is like calories. The true value is always kcal. Yes, calories. Well, I don't know, but whatever. I'm just saying watts is a pretty good way to measure something, but I'm just saying that, yeah, it's obviously not milliwatts. It's obviously 4 watts. How about your use of flashlight on glass at 45 degrees? How about your use of flashlight? Yeah, well, it should work. But clearly flashlights spread. I don't have a piece of glass, big enough to beam split a flashlight. But yes, it should work. Venus, I just realized if you switch the first letter of your first and second name, LOL. Penis vagina. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So she probably is a troll. Yeah, probably not a girl at all. The liar is here. The mega liar, the monstrous liar. The liar of in perpetuity. Why do you put up with this retardation? No other game in town. I mean, what other game should I play? I mean, these seem like pretty good games I'm playing. So these are the 2 games I play. Let's see. By the way, that Yale guy and all those other treatments explicitly took the slits to be vanishingly small. What doesn't, again, I'm just saying the idea of an ambiguity about this idea of what a vanishingly small is. You don't think that there's every likelihood that it makes a significant difference. Okay, the single slit, it clearly makes a huge difference. There's no such thing as vanishingly small in terms of the effect. The effect is consistently. It just gets more and more and more and more. And all you can do when you make it vanishingly small is you can make the number of photons so few that you won't be able to see any of the light. But as long as you can see the light, the effect of changing a tiny change in the slit width has a demonstrable change in the pattern produced. So again, this is just absolutely nonsense to say they made it an ambiguous nothing. It can never be insignificant. The only way you could make it irrelevant is to making it vanishingly big. So if you made it vanishingly large, then you could say it doesn't matter, because it wouldn't matter whether it's a mile slit or a 2-mile slit. Yes, those effects will be indecipherable. You will not see the difference. But everything going smaller is critically visible in terms of the effect. So that argument is bullshit. I thought her PC didn't seem to have a girl interested in physics. I thought her pic didn't seem like a girl interested in, I didn't see the pic, but who cares? I'm not going to pass judgment. Maybe it's a girl. It's quite possible. It's not impossible. It's just that, once somebody's playing games, you just say, how many games are they playing? So once they have a fake name, then well, okay, who knows what else is fake. It was for demonstrative purposes to talk about interference and leave out the single slit part for simplification. Well, again, you're making rationalizations for doing something wrong, and you're saying physics professors don't really care about getting the answer right, doing it right, recognizing the real theory involved. No, none of that matters. We'll just take this stupid, idiotic shortcut. I don't think that's what physics professors want to do. I don't think that's their intention. So I think that's kind of horseshit. But whatever, believe what you want. What I said was accurate. What I said was nobody can demonstrate it correctly. And I think that's a glaring statement about your conventional physics. They don't care about the truth. They just care about their propaganda. It's the most perfect math in the history of mankind, yet it doesn't actually work. I mean, you're saying that's okay. I'm saying that's a preposterous ground to be standing on and calling yourself and saying you have integrity as intellectuals, you have integrity as scientists, you have integrity as talking head authorities. Your authority is diminished when you're playing games with the truth. And that's a game you're playing with the truth. You're saying they're doing this on purpose. I'm saying they're doing it by negligence. So, and I don't think you can prove your on purpose argument. And I think it's kind of obvious that everybody wouldn't repeat the same mistake and keep spouting it as propaganda if they knew there was a right answer. Anyway, enough. His purpose is not to talk about the double slit in full detail. It was just the mathematical demonstration for a specific aspect. Well, it's wrong. That's not. The fucking videos are titled double slit experiment. It's supposed to be an analysis of the Huygens and the whole thing. And I'm just saying, so that's just bullshit. I'm sorry. This is just a bullshit excuse. All those lectures focus on middle hump and the interference that takes place there. And again, it's just not true. And what all of them ignore, I mean, both the physics lecture ignore the fact that the two patterns are superimposed on each other. They don't even deal with that issue at all. And again, the historical record is just complete nonsense. The Young experiment proved light is a wave. That's how they start the lecture. So, I mean, come on already. The Young experiment was completely unremarkable compared to Newton's rings. The single slit pattern is far more remarkable than the double slit pattern. So again, you're just such a propagandist. That's why they leave out the details. So again, just more excuses. Physics shouldn't be about getting the right answer. It should just be about a good fable. Again, you're just going to keep making excuses. I'm saying it's critical. When you leave out the slit width, you're creating the single impediment experiment. You're doing the needle experiment. Why would you call the needle experiment the double slit experiment? How is that being honest or accurate or scientific? That's not being scientific. That's being lazy and sloppy and reckless. And my whole point is that lazy, sloppy, and reckless is why physics is broken. Too much lazy, sloppy, and reckless. Too much, it seems like, therefore we'll just believe it because we won't bother analyzing whether a plain piece of glass splits light 50-50. No, we'll just make up, we'll create a half silvered mirror and forget that the half silvered mirror means we've created a bunch of diffraction gratings, and that those gratings are going to diffract the light. Oh, we'll just forget our own physics, our own science. We'll just forget that it exists and pretend there's two equal beams when one of them went through the slits and one of them reflected off the slits. Quite obviously, two different outcomes, two different kinds of light. Again, you're just such a propagandist. I'm just going to block you if you just keep typing this propaganda over and over again. You just keep saying the same shit over and over again. We've already argued it to death. You are making irrational excuses for sloppiness, and it's just such fucking obvious bullshit. Besides not using my real name, what I have done wrong? I didn't say you did anything wrong. I'm just saying you're suspect. You can't figure out how. Oh yes, I have a fake name. I should trust people with fake names because people have fake names for no reason. No, it makes you suspect. You can't figure that out. Oh. Maybe you are a woman, but you can't figure that out. It would be nice though if there was a general Invention room once in a while, though. Yes, okay. Well, maybe I'll do an Invention room once in a while. Okay, fine. I'm back. Well, I don't know if I care because I'm leaving soon. That doesn't justify your lack of nuance. So that's just bullshit. I've been do plenty of nuancing here. That you imply that they can't account for the slit width. I didn't imply they can't account for it. Where did I do that? They can't account for their math being right. They can't be doing accurate, precise math. My argument is they keep claiming, like Piro, they have perfect math. How is your math perfect? Oh, fuck, you're just such a distorter. Has anyone done the experiment in a vacuum? And again, you have to once in a while do the math actually with an experiment to actually demonstrate that your answers are correct. And they don't even do that with any regularity. They don't test their theories ever. Has anyone done the experiment in a vacuum? We already asked that. So, but anyway, I haven't found the experiment in a vacuum, frankly. I looked for it. I couldn't find it. Is the atmosphere having any effect on that? Yeah, so I haven't seen it done in a vacuum. And you don't even try to use different light sources. What does that even mean? Why would I bother with different light sources? Why would I do it the wrong way when I can do it the right way? Clearly, a laser beam provides an excellent light source in the fact that the light isn't coned. You haven't put it through a small aperture and created light that's not a flat wave, quote unquote, that is non-parallel light. I might as well use light as parallel as possible to see what really happens. So again, why would I do it the wrong way? Why would I go back and use a tin can and a string for a telephone? That would be kind of retarded. Given the effect of aperture size and pattern creation, wouldn't the photon size be detectable? Given the effect of aperture size on pattern creation, wouldn't the photon size be detectable? Theoretically, it would, but how the hell do you make something how do you make a hole in something that small, right? But let's say you made a hole that was as small as you can see under a microscope, let's say a really great microscope. You could probably detect how many photons get through that hole in total, and then have some idea of how big photons are in terms of how much they're spread. But it still won't tell you how big an actual photon is. So you're still out of luck. You can only tell how far apart the photons are, how much separation there is between photons, but you're not going to be able to tell how small they are. If you berate others for low standards, you should hold yourself to at least a bit higher. Well, whatever that slop means, fuck you. I've taken nothing but garbage from you people, and I have my own sense of, I don't do that to other people. You don't see me typing slop like you people type. on other people's videos, so I'm not being a hypocrite here. You people are incredibly rude. I mean, I think all these other people are tinfoil hatters, but I don't type comments on their board saying, you're a tinfoil hat nutter. I don't waste time doing that shit. I ask questions, or I try to order a question. I mean, I just left a comment on Professor Lewin's video where he's bitching because he doesn't get enough views for his math problems. And I just pointed out as politely as possible that, math isn't the only model, and that maybe you should spend some more time answering questions regarding these fundamental principles of physics and explaining why they're the right answer. People can disagree without being insipidly rude, and you're fucking rude. Okay, I need help understanding electromagnetic pulses and what I can do with them, and crystal energy. There's no crystal energy, whatever that is. Man, if I could meet you, you'd understand. I'm just average 27-year-old Joe wanting to learn a lot of thing. Yeah, well, I'm just saying physics is a lot to learn. So I'm just saying, if you think you're going to do it on the cheap, I mean, without having to really, I had to spend a lot of hours grokking this shit. I mean, I didn't just watch physics lectures. I watched them over and over again, some of them, to try to conceptualize. And so I'm just saying there's a lot of moving parts, and no, there's not really. There's very few moving parts. There's just a lot of parts. There's a lot of pieces, not a lot of different parts, but a lot of them. And it's hard to, there's a lot of fish in the school of fish. And so it's a little hard to get the whole thing in your head at once. Something like that. I'm just saying it took some work for me to get where I can talk about this stuff fairly fluidly and, substantially accurately, off the top of my head. Any idea for college or anything of that nature? I don't know what that means, but yeah, college is tough because they're gonna make you hate physics in the first 2 years because they're just gonna drown you in math. You're not even going to get to any of the theory, in the first 2 years. You're just going to be doing math, and that's going to suck. But frankly, nowadays you don't have to learn their way. You can learn your way. But I'm just saying, it still takes time. It takes time. Who is Mindless Marbles? Well, apparently he's Mindless Marbles. Who are you? Penis vagina. I mean, what a funny question to ask. Who is he? He's an asshole. He is the biggest internet skanky cunt. No, he's really not the biggest. But he is persistently irritating. So anyway, enough. It's 2 hours and a half. It's a monstrously long video. So anyway, but yeah, I covered a lot of stuff I wanted to cover, so that's good. It wasn't entirely all rubbish, but too much rubbish. But anyway, till next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. So thank you for participating. And, yeah, they'll apparently will continue to be these rooms for a while until I decide to, buckle down and start writing again. This is where I can use someone willing to teach me, LOL, because I'm willing to give the time. Yes, well, I'm not willing to do personal instruction unless you can, you have to pay me to tutor you. So you'll just have to take it as you get it. You were rude to me repeatedly way before. Well, that's what it's your perception. You're obviously were rude first. Actually, it's only after that time I decided not to bother to be polite. Well, whatever. I'm just saying that your the magnitude of your pettiness is just what it is. I mean, I'm a forgive and forgetter, and you're not, clearly. I mean, to go on other people's videos and type the crap you type, it's just really obnoxious. Sorry that this is off topic, but I can't say much about college. But every person I owe $1 million head start at birth. I don't know what that means. Every person is owed $1 million head start at birth. Well, whatever. I mean, obviously, you're not going to get that. Any value to the idea that there exists no electromonopoles. Well, I've already pointed out how I've discovered the monopoles. It's called electron and proton. If the universe is net neutral, well, again, the whole point of my theory is the universe obviously is made of a force that's polarized, so there's no net neutral in that sense. Cheers for the input, Gary. Have a good one. Righto. Bye for now. The old live stream doesn't have chat displayed, sadly, but I can post a link after the stream. And it would be a proof of what? See, again, you just can't let it go. You know, you're saying where you first commented, you have proof of your first comment. I don't think you have proof of your first comment. But whatever. Oh, you're just insufferably insufferable. I mean, I can go back to the old Piro conversations, and you showed up in those. You've been a pain in the ass for years, asshole. I don't understand these people. I just don't. Well, clearly, it's because they're insane. That's good reason I don't understand. They are insane. I'm a little neurotic, but I'm not anything like these insane cougars. Anyway, let's see. I have to shut this down the proper way or the chat disappears. So the first thing I have to do is close the room. Then I have to restore the chat. And then everything should be okay. So stop broadcast.